Hi, my name is Eric Aguilera. I am an electrical engineering student graduating this spring 2026 semester. And this is my glass final presentation. So, throughout my presentation, I'll be touching base on a few things. First and foremost, with my introduction to glass, as my formal introduction was through email, and it was my freshman year. I had no clue what the program was. Moving forward, with what life was like for me personally as a glass scholar, kind of reviewing my glass components, as there were five separate components that I had to fulfill throughout my time in the program. Some global experiences that I had throughout the program, and then five and six kind of going hand in hand with one another. So my final paper, as throughout my final paper, I essentially address a problem that goes hand in hand with two of Tannen impact areas, as well as three UN SDGs that I've addressed. And then lastly, I'll be speaking about my takeaways from glass in the program itself. So starting off with my introduction into the program, as I mentioned, honestly, the whole university environment was brand new to me as a freshman. Um, but then, as you can see here, on January 12th, 2023, I received an email stating that I've been selected to apply for the Global Leaders and Scholars in STEM program. So I honestly had no clue what the program was. I thought it was a club at first or something like that. Freshman year, you receive a bunch of emails of different clubs like inviting you to apply. So I thought it was something like that. But as I looked into it more, I saw many of the benefits and the support that Glass offered, not only for one semester of your undergraduate journey, but the following 3 years from your freshman year, all the support such as funding, study abroad opportunities, networking resources, and just overall like the community it offered. So with that, I decided to move on and submit an application. Little did I know, by me submitting the application, it would be the beginning of, just a very life changing, a lot of personal growth, a lot of personal understanding for me. And as you can see here through this slide, I submitted my application on March 1st of 2023. And then on April 4th of 2023, I received confirmation that I've been selected as one of the few applicants to follow through with the interview process. And then by God's grace, on June 14th, after I completed the initial application process as well as the interview process, I received an email from the dean at the time at Tannen stating that I've been selected as a Glass Scholar. And like I said, little did I know this program would honestly be very supportive and ultimately very life changing for me. Moving forward, for what is life like as a Glass Scholar? So first and foremost, definitely busy. A lot of sleepless nights, a lot of all nighters, just late nights in general, of just constantly doing work, constantly moving around, very busy. And as you can see here on this slide, I've highlighted like a few of the things that I've done throughout the program that has kept me busy. For example, I've been a double AP mentor for incoming freshmen. I've attended conventions. I've also served as a resident assistant here at Brittany Residence Hall on East 10th and Broadway, which is located on main campus for now 2 years. And then three of these sections here that I highlighted on the slide are more glass based. So not only was Glass very busy, but Glass did offer opportunities for community events, such as you can see in the top left, like a pumpkin painting event. On the bottom in the middle, like a pottery event that I attended. And as you can see there, I'm pictured there with the former Glass member herself. And then on the top right, several cohort events that Glass hosted that allowed me to connect with previous cohorts, just with previous cohorts and kind of get to know more about the program as well as getting to know about them as well. So as I mentioned, Glass was definitely very transformative for me. So this slide kind of just represents what the program means to me. So as you can see through the top headers, definitely a lot about experience, a lot of understanding, and most importantly, a lot about execution. So when it comes to experience, there's a lot of opportunities for one to put themselves like just outside of like your comfort zone, just pushing yourself outside of the comfort zone. And that's like what many, if not all of the experience that I had at Glass essentially did. Almost every experience I was very uncomfortable. I had to adapt, I had to figure things out, and that kind of goes hand in hand with understanding. So with all the experiences, or with each experience, I took a lot of time afterwards to kind of reflect on them and break down what I was learning. So this meant kind of just figuring out what worked throughout that experience, what didn't, and essentially just how I could improve while also gaining like a better understanding of just general perspectives and just different ways of thinking about things. And once I fully comprehended, you know, the experiences and what I can improve on and things like that, I was able to apply those lessons into real situations moving forward. So, in other words, execution. So, whether it was in leadership roles, which I took a lot on, academics, which is very important, or even like in professional settings, I genuinely did focus a lot on using what I learned to just kind of be more intentional about, for instance, career planning and just overall to perform at a higher level and just continue growing throughout the program and as well as beyond the program. So this slide here kind of just represents the five windows that, essentially, in other words, class components. So the requirement was to fulfill 12 total components, and minimum, I believe, two under each window, and then two like free for all. So as you can see here, my global competency, I did study abroad, as well as a spring break trip to Portugal, which was more of like a business model trip. My commitment to service, as you can see under the header, my leadership development experiences, my academic excellence throughout the program, and then as well as my professional development throughout the program as well. Now, this slide and the following two slides are kind of just representing some of my global experiences that I've received or that I've been able to take up on through the support of Glass. So first and foremost was my study abroad semester, which was in NYU Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. As you can see through these pictures, I most definitely had a grand time. I'm cheesing from ear to ear in every single picture. As you can see in the top left, I'm just wearing the traditional clothing. Um, Boston Dynamics right below that same picture, which was pretty cool. They had like their own lab within the campus over there, which was pretty cool. Visiting Dubai, visiting Global Village, and two of the pictures that I want to highlight here specifically, as they'll translate more into my final paper discussion, are the pictures between the water and me holding, I believe it was an owl, are the transmission lines present throughout the desert, as well as the transmission lines in the bottom right corner of the slide. Just the transmission lines kind of flowing throughout the city. This slide is once again another I would say global experience that I had, which was my alternative summer break trip to Kenya. So this was essentially a community service trip where you can see on the bottom left where we were essentially just tasked of painting. It was actually a lot more than painting, but painting, some of the walls that they had, as you can see on the bottom left, one of the murals that we did was how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity, which is, I think, very unique and very nice for the students or for the kids in Kenya. As my experience over there, I saw that many of them, despite their current living situations, still had a lot of faith and still believed in, obviously moving forward and just doing better for themselves. And as you can see, like through the rest of the pictures, once again, cheesing ear to ear, a very fun experience. Now, again, the two pictures that I want to highlight here in particular are the pictures of the building itself and some of the pictures of the wiring going throughout the building, which is right next to that. Once again, this is going to go, it'll make sense a lot more as to why I included them once I discuss my final paper a little bit more. My most recent service trip was this spring break. So this spring 2026 semester spring break trip, which was once again another community service trip, particularly in an animal rescue center. Um, Once again, smiling ear to ear in every picture. Very fun experience. Definitely recommend. And then once again, I included two of these pictures in every single global experience, which was electrical components or just the infrastructure that I saw over there. And in this case, the two pictures I have here on the bottom right, and once again, it will make a lot more sense once I move on, which is the next slide of my final paper discussion. So now on my final paper slide, so my final paper is just a collaboration between my own electrical background, what I've learned studying electrical engineering here during my undergraduate time at Tannin, as well as just my experiences or just global experiences that I've had throughout the program. The title of my paper is From Field to Theory: Insights on Global Energy Challenges and the Infrastructure Gap. So, the overall main idea of my paper is the infrastructure gap, in particular with the electrical infrastructure. So, as you can see, energy demand is rapidly evolving nowadays, especially with the expansion of data centers, electric vehicles, things like that. And with the expansion of many of these things, a lot of the current grid systems that we have implemented, they're simply just not built for this large scale or just complexity in general. So as a result, there's a mismatch between the supply systems and real world needs. So in particular with developing regions, for instance, in the United States, as I mentioned, with data centers, electric vehicle expansion, it's just too much expansion where a lot of these systems just can't handle the load. And in order to address this problem, it's a collaboration of political will and funding. So, in order to replace all of this equipment, it's very, very expensive. Like, for instance, my firsthand experience, which included my internship with Eaton, I was able to see a lot of the projects that take place, in particular, like I said, with data centers and just overall power system distribution here in New York State, Long Island, and as well as New Jersey. And with my internship, that I've been able to get, funny enough, through the support of Glass by attending conventions and networking with professionals, I was able to see just how expensive and how elaborate these projects are and how time consuming they are. So that's definitely like one of the main problems in developing regions, just being able to allot millions, if not billions, of dollars into these projects, the time it takes for these projects to finish, and overall just the political aspect behind actually attaining the funds, following through with the projects, and things of that nature. And then in developer regions, as you saw through Ecuador, through my picture there in Ecuador and Kenya, a lot of the infrastructure over there is simply just old, or in other words, old. So it's very, a lot of the infrastructure over there is old and nothing is essentially updated like at all. If anything, the expansion of those systems in developing regions are, it's just patchwork. So using these old systems and just attaching a line here, attaching a line over there, and just feeding off of these same old systems. And when that happens, once again, these old systems just can't handle these heavy loads, which essentially causes people to have limited access to reliable grid systems, or just in other words, like reliable electricity overall. So with developing regions, is definitely, once again, a problem of funding, but also the education and the technicality behind the systems that people generally don't understand in these developing regions. With the overall topic of my paper, it goes hand in hand with UN SDGs, the following three and two tangent impact areas. So the following SDGs that I'm kind of touching base on throughout my paper are SDGs 11, which is industrial cities and communities. Just make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, sustainable. SDG number 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So just building resilient infrastructure to promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation, as well as SDG number 7, which is affordable and clean energy. So just ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Clearly, that's the main idea of my paper, just addressing all these SDGs through, like I said, my electrical background, my research that I've done, and my global experiences. And then the two tangent impact areas that my paper and just my overall work and experience throughout the program addresses is the industrial, urban, and environmental sustainability area, and the systems engineering and complex decision making, because the two, although developing and developed regions do have their separate issues, the main underlying issue is that it's not necessarily an engineering one. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes a lot of money, but it's more than that. It's a human issue where people who have access to reliable electricity, they don't understand what it's like to live without that access. So it becomes like a big mosh pit of just different things. And yeah, so these are like, just the following, like the SDGs and the tenant impact areas that my paper and my overall work throughout the program address. Now, lastly, my takeaways from the glass program itself. So, as you can see here, my five main takeaways are perspective, ownership, or I want to start with purpose, adaptability, and lastly, consistency. So, consistency is definitely the one that I want to speak about more here on the slide because, as I mentioned here on the slide, real progress comes from showing up every day, even when it's not convenient. As I mentioned, class was a very busy time, or being a glass scholar was a very busy time, a lot of running around, a lot of challenges, barriers, things to overcome. And it was very difficult for me personally. But, by being consistent, I've been able to get where I am in this position now, um, and things like that. And then adaptability is another one I want to really touch base on here on the side because a lot of the experiences that I had through Glass have been all about adaptability, just like experiencing different things, understanding like the experiences in themselves, and then being able to adapt whenever an experience like that ever does show up again or a new experience comes up. Then kind of how to manage yourself a little bit better. So my takeaways from Glass would definitely be these five, but for me personally, the most important ones is definitely consistency and adaptability. So yeah, this was essentially my Glass final presentation. A little brief, but throughout my final paper and throughout my website and all of my other components that I've completed for the program, you can get a little bit more detailed description on just what I've done throughout the program and just the route that I took and how I've been able to manage everything in itself. I appreciate you for watching my presentation, and thank you.